Hi, I'm Karen, the Weekend Craftaholic, and today I wanted to share with you my little Memorydex. So what is Memorydex? I've been asking this question for a few weeks now, and I had to get on the bandwagon, of course, when I was inspired by so many Instagram pictures. Basically it is like a Rolodex, but the idea is you keep your memories on them. So they are about 4 inches by 3 inches, just over 3 inches high, and the idea is it's like the old-fashioned Rolodex where you could flip these cards through. You can buy the Rolodex holders. These are from these cards from Heidi Swap. I guess it's her idea initially, but a great way to do little craft projects. And I'm going to talk you through a couple of them that I'm going to make for you today, just to show you how quick and easy they are. They come together so quick. A lot of people are using them for journaling, obviously keeping memories. Be great with some of those little 4x3 photos. And with me getting if you saw my sprocket video last week, that was another great reason for getting it, because I knew I wanted to start making these. So these are a few that I've made already, and I've shared these on Instagram already. So if you're not on my Instagram account, please have a look. You'll see that I shared these this week. These were so much fun to make. The box itself, it was just a gift box. I'm not going to go through how you make that. A lot of people have just been using paper straws in the middle. I happen to have these little wooden dowels anyway for some dividers I made for my drawer. But you can see the ones that I've made, and all of these, I would say none of them took more than 10 minutes to come together. So the way I'm going to use it is just to each of my little paper collections, I'm just going to do some little Memorydex cards with those, rather than to use it as memory keeping as such. And what I did was buy a kit, and I'll put the link below. It was only $6 for 100 of these sheets, plus you got all of these great dividers as well. So I'll just quickly show you those as I keep on talking. They do a punch. It's always been out of stock when I've looked, but now that I've caught the bug, I'm definitely going to invest in one. And that way I can make my own, because you'll see what I'm doing to make this work is just kind of trace my pattern paper around these pieces. But you can see great value, 100 cards that you can use. You can of course make your own, and they do come as a die as well. The only problem is I can't easily get that in Australia. Spotlight do stock the dies, but only online. And the postage is just crazy. You can't pick it up in store. So you can see great value for money. They are quite good cardstock, I'd say, but I do like adding the paper to it anyway, just to give it a bit more sturdiness, a bit thicker. So these are going to absolutely be enough to fill this box by the time they're decorated. And you can see here, you can do anything with them. You can use them for journaling, put like I say, your photos. Some people are doing scriptures. Thought I wanted to give it a go because I am the Weekend Craftaholic. I'm very lucky that I get a couple of hours over the weekend each day to spend crafting in my craft room. And I do try and sneak in a bit of time during the week. But not a lot of time. So these are perfect if you're time poor like me, but you do just want to have a little bit of that creative outlet as well. So without further ado, let's crack on. I want to show you how quick they are. So for this card, I'm going to use the Echo Park A Dog's Tale paper collection, and as I mentioned before, I'm actually going to be creating my little Memorydex box full of Memorydex cards that contain all of my different paper collections. So I've only got about 12 different paper collections, but I think that's a great number to use in that little box that I've got, and I'm just going to use it for decoration in my craft room. But a lot of people do Memorydex card swaps, so definitely check out Instagram. That's where you'll see a lot of this, as well as Pinterest. And you can see here now, this is where I've chosen my pattern paper that I'm going to use as the background, and I'm just tracing around it. So if you're not sure whether to dive in and start to do Memorydex, this is a great cheaper way to do this. As I said, there is dies and there's a punch that you can use. But I mean, they are a big investment. The dies, well, in Australia they're $20 plus postage, and the punch itself is $20 US plus postage. So it's really got to be something that you know you're going to use time and time again. Otherwise, just cutting out like this I think is perfectly fine, especially if you're keeping it for yourself like I am. If it was something that I was going to send as a gift, then yeah, I'd probably want to make sure it was a little bit more perfect. Now I'm just fussy cutting this out. Of course you could just use a corner punch as well if you did want rounded corners, that is. Obviously you can have any shape at all. And the other thing I would say, when you look at some of the inspiration on there, mine is very much a beginner version, so it's not going to be as embellished as you see on Instagram and some of the others. This is probably the 5th Memorydex card I've made so far, but that's what I love about it. You don't have to be an expert at this. It's definitely great for a beginner crafter. And what I'm doing here is fussy cutting out just where we normally see the punched bits that are going to go on my little wooden dowels. I'm not going to pay too much attention to that because I know once I've got it stuck to the card itself, I'll tidy that up as well. Now I'm going to use liquid glue just to adhere this to the card. That's because I need that slippiness and I want to be able to wiggle it around and get it in the right place before it does stick down. So I'm going to use that. Like I say, you probably don't need to do this. You could just embellish these cards themselves, especially if you didn't want to use pattern paper, if you just wanted maybe just to have a nice watercolour background or draw on it yourself. They do different ones. I've got the striped ones, but they do plain ones, some grid effect, lots of different ones to choose from. You can of course decorate both sides of these. I have seen that done as well, and the great beauty about these things is because if you're going to keep them in a box or on the Rolodex machine itself rather than in an album, is you could have it as embellished as you want, as thick as you want. You don't have to worry about putting too much dimension on it. You can really layer up some of your embellishment and ephemera. I'm not going to do that. The back I'm just going to leave as is, and I'm just making a note of the actual paper collection itself as well as the date that I've made the little Memorydex card. That said, I do plan on making another one of these for my niece, and I will do the back side for that, but I'm going to use it for journaling. So if you did want to use this for journaling, I've also seen a lot of people use them for scriptures, that's another good way of using both sides of these so that you really use the most of the space on the front of it for your layout itself. Now you can see here the pad that I'm using is a 6x6, and it's really great for these smaller pads, which obviously the patterns are in context. There's the smaller pattern shapes than the 12x12. I hope I'm explaining myself well. And usually these pads do have some other form of, they normally have tags, or like here, these little cards as well that you can use, not just the pattern paper themselves. Obviously some of the pattern paper will have images, florals and things that you can cut out also to use as embellishments, make your own die cuts. So what I'm using now is just a piece of old foam backing. It's not an adhesive one, and I'm just going to use that just to lift this sentiment just off the card slightly as well. And I'm going to use the liquid glue again on this. Now I don't think I mentioned earlier, but I purposely kept this in real time for you. It's not something I usually do. I do normally speed it up by 2 or 4. I personally prefer to watch that when I'm watching crafting YouTube videos. I like to see the speeded up version. I'm very impatient. But I thought just for the purposes of this video, and I wanted to show you just how super quick these come together. The entire little card that you see takes me just over 7 minutes to do. So definitely achievable if you want to do a midweek crafting session, which is definitely something that I've been doing during the week with these. So you can see now I've just applied that adhesive again. Now you will see me take that off afterwards, because I think the longest time that I spend on this is actually deciding what I'm going to put on the card, because I've got the sticker sheets, I've got the die cut packs as well as the pattern paper, so it's just deciding what's going to look well on some of this. But I do end up moving that little sentiment further down later, and that's the only drawback really I find of using liquid glue. You really need to, once it's set, whereas the tape runner that I've got, you can leave it for quite a while, good 10-20 minutes before it sets. So I'm just finishing off now, just embellishing this with some of the stickers from the pack. As I say, this is just my way of recording the collections that I've got, and I'm not going to do any journaling. I'm not really going to add anything from my stash. You do see me use the Wink of Stella pen later, because I put that on everything really, just to give it that little sparkle. But apart from that, everything is just from this paper pad. So again, even from the pad, you can see it's got this sentiment strip here that I'm now gonna chop up and use as well as another little embellishment on this Memorydex card. And because the size of these little cards, it's also a great way to use up any journaling or project life cards you've got. So if you've got some of the 6x4 cards, I would say they would be the perfect size for this. And you could even, if you've got the template yourself, you could even do it straight from that. The word of caution I would give you though is wherever you're going to store it is just make sure that you can see here I've got this sentiment hanging off slightly. My box probably isn't the right size, that's why you saw me struggling earlier just to move them around, because I've got a lot of them with some of the embellishments hanging over the edge as well as at the top. So just make sure wherever you store them it's going to be wide enough, or else you might find like me you're struggling a little when the cards are in. And of course, having some of the embellishments hanging over the edge, I think is a great effect as well, particularly at the sides and over the top. And as I showed you just with those divider cards earlier as well, there are different ways you can have the top of it. Some of them are like tags, so if you did want to put dividers in there as well, or I think they also sell months, so they do January through to December. So there's lots of different options with this that you can use. And if you are a crafter that likes to make mini albums, which I am, I just think this is a nice refreshing way to do that instead of just making a mini album. And so this is my layout almost done. I'm normally up to the end of this. All I've got to do now is apply that wink of Stella that I mentioned. If you've not come across Memorydex before, I hope this has been informative and you've enjoyed it. I am going to be posting one of these on my Instagram every Wednesday. It's just going to be midweek Memorydex for me. Otherwise my Instagram feed is just going to be full of these every day of the week. And if you did enjoy this video, I would really love it if you left a comment and gave it a like, and also subscribe if you're not already. But here is my finished Memorydex card. Have a great weekend. Hey, thanks for watching. If you've got any comments about this video, please leave them below. I'd love to see them. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. That way YouTube knows to recommend similar ones for you. And finally, if you'd like to see more from me, and I hope so, please subscribe by clicking the link below. I post new content every weekend.